Wow, isn't it beautiful? Hey guys, how are you doing? So glad to see you. I hope you really enjoy what we have prepared for you today. So, I brought a really special cider to start off with, and what's so special about it is a lot of it came from this very orchard. It features 50% organic Gravenstein and a blend of other heirloom and traditional tannic cider apples, and it's called Graviva. And this is the party cider. It's like Viva la Grave. So I thought it would be a great one to get started with. And while I'm starting the pour, Garrett, maybe you can share a little bit from your experience of principles for pairing wine and food and see if they relate to cider and food as well.
Sure. So with wine and food, I mean, sometimes you want complementary flavors, right? So something buttery going with a buttery Chardonnay, for instance. Sometimes you want to highlight contrasts, so you'll pick something with a contrasting flavor profile. And all of that is great, but you know what? I think the most important thing about pairing wine with food is enjoying what you're drinking, enjoying who it's with, and enjoying the food that you're eating along with it all together. So I think that's the most important part of wine and food pairing. How does that relate to cider?
Absolutely the same. I mean, what it is about is pleasure and sharing it with other people and seeing what they think. And there are some really guiding principles, but for the most part, this is subjective and it's something to be explored rather than, instructed. And so what I want to do today is just sort of explore some of my favorite pairings and then see what you all think about it. So what I just poured for you here, again, is Graviva. And this is a really pretty, lightly a sharp, acidic cider with a good earthiness, has some good effervescence, and because of that, it has a lot of versatility. And what I particularly love to do is pair it with some smoked local salmon. So really, you can't beat it. It's a great combination. And something very special that I wanted to bring today are cheeses from the Wyrock Farm and Creamery in Petaluma. So these are friends of ours, and the reason we know them is because they have a flock of about 150 dairy sheep. And what do sheep like to eat? You know it. They love apples. And so what we do is we save all of the pressed apple pomace from, that once it gets squeezed, it's dried out. But the sheep love it. There's some really good sugars in there. And so the Wyrocks come and they bring it back home to their farm. They feed their dairy sheep. And in return, we get some beautiful sheep milk cheeses. So it's a full circle. So what I would love for you to do is just give it a try and see what you think about the interplay of flavors and textures. Sometimes like and like attracts, and sometimes opposites attract as well.
Exactly. Great. All right. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh yeah, that is gonna go dynamite with this cheese.
Yeah. All right. Dig in.
Yeah. Here, I'll get you a little bit of that.
Sure. Sounds good.
Good. I'll have some of
good.
this.
All right.
Oh yeah, please pass that. Look at that beautiful dill.
Here, I'll start over there with you.
Fabulous. Thanks.
All right. Now this is pretty cool. The cider is chilled quite a bit. Is this at the right temperature, or what's the right temperature?
That's a great question. So, as with wine, there are what I consider ideal serving temperatures for cider. With something with a little bit of residual sugar, such as this one, it was just less than 1% residual sugar, and the effervescence, I would like this chilled at around 50 degrees. So essentially, you take it out of your refrigerator, let it open up for maybe 5 minutes or so, and see what you think. A really great way of figuring out the cider temperature you like is try it again and again and again after every 5 minutes.
Just keep drinking.
Just keep drinking. And when you find that sweet spot, you'll know it. But I would say that this is actually just right.
Well, the acidity that's in there really cuts through the cheese nicely.
Absolutely. The effervescence does as well. So this is the most effervescent of our ciders for that very reason, because the acidity and the effervescence together really make it a very food-friendly cider.
Great. Would you say that most of your other ciders are half that effervescent, or?
They're definitely less effervescent. And that is for a deliberate reason. We think that there's different things that are accentuated by carbonation, and then different profiles that are heightened by a little lack of it.
Got it. What would you say is heightened by the carbonation?
Acidity, for sure. I would say acidity, definitely, and also what we all typically think about with cider. So what comes to mind is apple taste. I think that is brightened by the carbonation. And for this one, I love what the Gravenstein gives to it. And for that reason, the effervescence really adds to that complexity.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, great. And what's the alcohol content on this one?
This one is 8%.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's because our apples here in Sonoma County, because of our long dry growing seasons, they reach sugar levels that are very concentrated and high compared to the rest of the country. And we don't water it down or dilute it. This is what these trees here want to give you, and that's what we're giving you too. All right, I hope you enjoyed that one, because I've got another one that features the Gravenstein. This one's called Inclinado, and that's Spanish for tilted. And what's really cool about it is this is made up completely from apples from this farm, from Laura's orchard.
Oh, that's great.
So isn't that cool? We get to see them on the tree, and we'll taste them in glass. And I'm going to open this and tell you a little bit about it. So, Garrett, there's a tradition in Spain, right, of making, here we go, of making Spanish wines that are done with a traditional long pour. Is that correct?
Spanish wines that are done with a traditional long pour. I don't know about that. What's that?
Oh, well, there's Spanish wines and Spanish ciders that are made from
ciders,
sugar.
maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
tell me about it.
I'll tell you. So, we love to use tradition as a jumping off point for our ciders and then explore them with our local apples here. And so what we did is there's, in Spain, in the Basque and Asturias region, so of northern Spain, they have a tradition of cider making as well as wine, where they do still. That means that they have no carbonation. We were just talking about carbonation. They have no carbonation, but they do something called a long pour or a choach. And they take it up high like here with a little tumbler here. And they drop it down. And what happens is they're aerating the ciders. And they do this so with the wines to give it some natural effervescence. So that is really an exciting part about that tradition.
Right.
Now, let's be honest. If I were to do that today, we'd be a mess. So it's true, I admit it. So what we did with this cider, which is 100% organic Gravenstein, and it was barrel fermented and aged in neutral French oak, using natural yeast. So it's a wild yeast ferment. To give it this little bubble that you'll see in here, we approximated it with bottle conditioning. We took some juice from the 2014 harvest, put it in there, and let it bubble away. So that's what you're getting here. I'll give that a little taste. What do you think?
It's a little bit more tangy.
Yes.
Than the other.
Absolutely, and that is also in keeping with the Spanish Cider tradition, is that they have a lot of tanginess and a little barnyard. And that's from the natural yeast and the way that they ferment it in the barrel, where the oxygen exchange happens.
Right.
And maybe gives it a little extra acidity.
Right.
But I love it. I love it because it's versatile cider for pairing with really interesting foods. So there's a salinity in here that I think does really nicely with padron peppers, kind of a Spanish influence, right? And then as well as this beautiful charcuterie plate. This is from Zazu, which is one of our great restaurant partners. They also make their own charcuterie from local heritage pigs grazed right here in Sonoma and Mendocino counties. And they're really great friends of ours too. So I'll pass these around and let me know what you think about this pairing.
Great, perfect. Now, can you talk a little bit about the natural yeast fermentation? Because that's a point that I think is really special, where you basically just put the juice in the barrel and then you don't do anything else to it. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It suffers a little bit from benign neglect, I like to say. But it's actually the trickiest way of making cider, because you're giving up so much control and trying to let nature take its course without turning into vinegar. So it's a lot of climate control. We keep the cellar really cool. And Scott is just a very clean cider maker, and that really helps. But but we're letting the natural yeast, the yeasts that are found here on these apples, do the work that we would normally do through inoculation by bringing in a yeast. The natural yeasts are going to do it. So it does add a lot of different complexity than you would find with maybe our other ciders, where we use a lot of like champagne and wine yeast during the fermentation.